Hello, everybody. I'm Ricky Smith. Welcome to Faith on Friday Presents. At Faith on Friday Presents, our goal is to drive motivation by closing the door on the comfort zone, to foster inspiration by showing you what's possible, and to create transformation by challenging those negative, unproductive mindsets. And don't forget, while you're here, subscribe to this YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and share us with your network. So, today we're talking about money, honey. Think about your money. We've learned how to make it because we work really hard. We learn how to pay our bills because we were trained to do so early. But have you ever considered what is your relationship with your money, your friends, your spouses? That is what we're talking about today, money and your relationships. But first of all, everybody, please say hello to Penny Kid. Woo, 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 woo. Hey, Pen, how are ya?
Thank you for having me, Ricky. I am amazing. So glad
Yeah,
to be
you kind
here
of
on
are.
Faith on Friday.
I'm so glad to have you. Full disclosure, y'all. Penny's not just my random guest. Penny's my bestie. Penny and I have known each other for a while. We still can't figure out how long, but we know from where we met. But yeah, Penny and I have been together for a long time, so I'm super excited to have her on the show. So, Penny, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are located.
Well, nowhere near you. I'm in Colorado. So I have been, I'm a native Coloradan and I'm married to my husband, Mark, who we'll talk about probably later. And I have two kids, and I have been a financial coach for about 12 years. And before that, I was a social worker. So I come at money from a little bit different standpoint than a lot of people think when we're talking money.
Yeah, you do. And I love that you talk about money in the way you do. We're also going to talk about your book because I know wrote your first book, so congratulations on that. But before we talk about the book, let's talk about this. You heard this in the intro. We're talking about money and your relationships. Give us a little background because when you think about money, there's all kind of relationships. You know, my relationship to money, my relationship with myself, my relationship with the people around me to whom my money has to go and all the things.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about here? Money and relationships.
Well, as you might be aware, money can be very emotional, right? And it does have many relationships, and some of them are good, and some of them are maybe not so good. But what I wanted to talk about today was kind of how do we talk money and deal with money with our significant others, maybe with our
Mm.
children, because it does influence so many parts of our lives, and it can be a sticking point and cause real damage, if you will, to
I love it.
relationships if we don't do it in the right way.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, the statistic about most people that get divorced behind money issues, woes,
Yeah,
problems, whatever you want to call it. And when you talk about the relationship that your money has in your significant relationship, whether it's your spouse or your kids or whatever, what does that mean? Because if I'm working, we make money, the bills are paid. What could possibly be wrong?
well, not everybody's in that position, right? Some people are just so busy and kind of going through life that maybe they're not even getting the bills paid on the regular,
Mm,
or they're not being mindful. So one of my things is all about being intentional with your money and not
right.
just, I like to say, tell your money where to go instead of wonder where it went. And otherwise it can just wander off, and life is
Yeah.
busy and you're just doing all the things and being influenced and marketed to. And if you don't have a plan for your money, it kind of just goes wherever it wants, like a,
Yeah.
you know,
It
river
does.
with no
It
boundaries.
flies around. But when you're talking relationships in particular, and you talk about intentionality, how does that relate to your relationships? Because I know you come from that social work background. There's some different challenges in that, especially if I feel like this about money, they feel like this about money. What do you do in that situation?
Right. That's, I think, a lot of what I've seen is that people who are in a partnership don't always see eye to eye. They probably were not raised the same around money. There's oftentimes one is a saver and one is a spender,
Mm,
and it can cause that kind of conflict because we're very emotional and possessive around our money. And
wow.
so it can break down the conversations if
Mm-hmm.
we're not sitting down and saying, okay, where are we going? It's that whole being equally yoked kind of thing,
Wow.
because otherwise we could be trying to head in two different directions. And
Sure.
that doesn't feel good, right? And your significant relationship, your
Mm-hmm.
partner, and it can cause a lot of drama in families around raising your kids around money, and how
Yeah.
much do you give kids money, and are you borrowing money from friends or family? What does that do to the dynamic of
Yeah.
relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. I hear people asking this question, especially some of our newly married folks or folks who are in a significant relationship long term first time. Is it okay to have separate accounts with your significant other?
I would say yes, it's okay if that's really what you want. Is
Hmm.
it best practice or what I recommend? Not necessarily. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people do that in an attempt to eliminate conflict.
Right.
And what it does is it makes you be like, I don't know, two roommates. I'll do what I want
Wow.
with my money, you do what you want with your money.
Yeah.
But when you are standing in front of the preacher and he says, and now you are one, a part of your challenge is to learn how to do this money thing together, and to
Yeah.
both voice have a voice in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not one way or the other. It should be that negotiation, like
Mm.
most things in marriage should be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That
But there
negotiation.
are reasons to have separate accounts for sure, especially
Mm-hmm.
if it's maybe a second marriage or third marriage or something like that. Maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
been some kind of infidelity around money.
Right.
And,
Wow.
so I guess I would never say never, but
Mm-hmm.
my goal would be to have the transparency around the money, not so much about where it sits, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if
Mm-hmm.
you can't talk about it, you can't see each other's money, and it's kind of like, it's my money, I get to do whatever I want. Well,
Right.
that's not super healthy for your relationship.
Yeah. I like what you said about not so much where the money sits, but basically where it goes. And when you're having these negotiations, which I don't even know how I feel about that word when it comes around money, what does that conversation look like? What kind of transparency, which is the word that you use, what kind of transparency should we be looking for or be asking about?
I like to get people to the place where they basically are having money dates every week or
Ooh,
every paycheck, and having
okay.
kind of that dream about where do we want our money to go, what are our goals for the long term and the short term, and having those conversations if around money, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, we made X number of dollars, where's it going to go this time? So I go deep with people into how to really be intentional with their spending, the
Mm-hmm.
dreaded B word, the budget word
Not the
that so
B
many
word
people
pen,
don't
nah.
like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Because it
but
sounds
it's
so restrictive.
it does. And people think, I don't want to do a budget, but really I find that it's really freeing. And most of my people are like, they feel more freedom around their money because they took time at the beginning to say how much for certain
Mm-hmm.
things.
Right.
It's not, I can't do anything. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
where does the dollars, where's my priority? Right. And
Yeah.
so when you're having that conversation with your significant other, and it's fostering the conversation. Do I want to go to Kansas or Bali? Do I want to work till I die or retire? Do I want to put the kids in every activity or zero activities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
giving and savings are a big part of what we're challenged to do with our money, not just
Yeah.
buy all the toys, right? And
Mm.
if we're not going to talk about it, it's really hard to get there. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
getting in your car without any destination,
Mm-hmm.
and having you just are driving around in circles. You're
Right.
you're not
And then
probably
wondering
getting
why you're not
anywhere.
getting anywhere.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
one of the things at the beginning that you made a point to say that you are a financial coach.
Right.
Now, Explain what that is. Because some people, we've heard the term coach. Everybody's a coach for something now, right?
Yep,
But what is a
yep,
financial coach versus a financial planner, a financial
right.
consultant? What do you do?
Yeah, and it's a fairly new industry, right? I even consider myself kind of a financial life coach because money touches so many things, and we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about your life and your plan. But a financial coach is not, I'm not licensed to put your money in the market or sell
Mm-hmm.
you insurance or advise you on what to do with your money. I really see myself like a flashlight shining the light on your situation and helping you decide what you want to do with the money.
Wow.
I'm not a bookkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an accountant. It's a very specific
Mm-hmm.
role. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit counseling and mediator and sometimes a little bit of butt kicker to
I
say,
like
okay, you
it.
said you wanted to do this, you fell
So
down, let's get back
accountability.
up. Accountability.
I like
Yeah.
butt kicker better because that's
Yeah.
probably more what it
That's
is.
who I
So,
am. Yeah.
yeah, that's literally who you are. Now, this is a great segue into your book. You just wrote a new book. Congratulations
I
on your
did
first
write a
book,
book.
my
It's my
friend.
book.
Yes, and the book is called Make Your Money Behave.
Yes.
So, tell us about your book.
Yeah, it's a simple read. It's very tip driven. It's meant to be concrete things that anybody can put into their life and hopefully think about some things that maybe they haven't done yet or that they
Yeah.
could fine tune. It's
Mm-hmm.
great for young people just starting out, but it's also great for people that are more a little older, like I might be. Um, and the all the people that I have shared it with have said, "Wow, I learned some tips in there." So it's intended to help people slow down and start being mindful
Mm-hmm.
about what do I want my money to do and
Yeah.
how am I going to get there. One of the things that I'm so passionate about is that so much of our society is just like lighting $100 bills on fire by giving it
Woo.
to the credit card companies and the
Mm,
lenders and stuff that they don't really realize they have a choice around that and
so
that
good.
you could change that with
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of intentionality. And
Yeah.
it's that magic of compound interest. You can either earn it or you can pay it.
Mm-hmm.
And slowing down and going, what's a little bit going to make a difference
Yeah.
is really my passion
And,
instead of
and you
saying
do it
I
really
can't do
good.
anything.
Yeah, but you do it really good. So, out of your book, give us two tips, just two, because we want everyone to go buy your book. Give us two tips, simple. We can implement them right now out of your book.
I think the first one would be to be aware. You have to look at it. You have to look at bank balances and statements and interest rates. So many people today with our digital world, you look at the balance in your checkbook and you just think, yeah, I got money, I can do that. But you
Right.
forget that some of that money is earmarked for so many other things
Mm-hmm.
that, and again, like if you don't even know what your interest rate is, you don't feel the impact of,
Woo.
what you're earning because a lot of people aren't earning it in their savings account either. So even if
Mm-hmm.
they're not paying it in debt, they're not earning it where they should. So I think awareness, you can start today being aware and
Mm-hmm.
having those conversations with people. That'd be
Mm-hmm.
one. What's a good second one? I think just start. I really
So
believe
good.
that creating a spending plan, you just start with the next paycheck. I
Mm-hmm.
think the part that I got wrong for so many years, because I didn't really learn to budget until I was 40.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just start and don't feel like I'm too old to do this, you have the
Yeah.
possibility of change. But budgeting seems daunting to people. And I have, dozens of tips of like literally how to get through a budget. But
Awesome.
I do it by paycheck. I don't necessarily see it as a one time thing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
dynamic month to month, paycheck to paycheck sometimes because your life
Yeah,
is different.
that's true.
So just
Yeah.
designate these dollars, where are they going to go today?
So be
And do it
aware
over and over
and
again
get started
and get started.
and bring your partner along with you.
Yeah.
It's a relationship. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, like you said earlier, we have relationships in all kinds of ways,
Mm-hmm.
and our money has different emotions to us. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we people were raised a certain kind of way and they have shame and embarrassment. And I think
Mm-hmm.
my goal is for it to just normalize the conversations around
Right.
money and get past the shame and do something.
And do something.
It doesn't really help to be just frozen in embarrassment or shame
Mm-hmm.
and belief that, oh, well, I don't have money or I wasn't raised with money, so therefore I never
Here we
can
go.
have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. So, Penny, before we get to the other part, there's a story I want you to tell. You have lots of them, but the one that made the most impact on me is about your mom and about how her money and that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as I was working on getting out of debt, so we paid about $30,000 of credit card debt and cars and whatever we had at that point. And then we paid our mortgage off and we cash flowed two kids through college without any student loans. And
Mm-hmm.
this was on a social worker and a respiratory therapist income. We never made much money.
Mm-hmm.
And just about the time as I was getting out of debt, my mom told me that she was upset with her CPA because he told her that she could run out of money based on how she was pulling it out to live
Mm-hmm.
on. And my mom lived a very frugal life and gave away a fair amount. And so I realized when I said, "Well, how much do you have?" And I asked her the question, she had something like 15 months left of what
Wow.
she was pulling out. I don't know, 1,200 or 1,500 a month. She wasn't doing anything crazy. She had a paid for house, but she never looked at it. And nobody was helping her look at it
Mm-hmm.
early on. And that caused a great deal of stress on the relationships in my family because all of a sudden I feel like, oh, well, now we're going to have to take care of mom
Right.
because, we're barely getting our own feet on the ground and we still have kids to take care of. And what are we going to do if mom runs out of money? And
Mm-hmm.
I have I say God had a greater plan, and thank goodness she died right before she ran out of money.
Wow.
Because as much as I miss her, I think
Mm-hmm.
it would have been awful to live with the situation of my mom gets $1,200 a month. How's she supposed to live?
Yeah.
And people
Wow.
think if you have a paid for house, well, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need money. Well, you still pay taxes and insurance on that house, and
That's
you still have
true.
to heat that house and put lights on, food
Yeah.
maybe on the table, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't
Yeah.
really exist on $1,200 a month, even with those things being
Isn't
paid
that
for.
something? What an interesting dichotomy because, like you said, a lot of people think, well, if my house is paid off, I'm done.
That'll be good.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
be great. All I need is that. But now, Penny, also, what do you tell the person? Well, you don't understand my situation because you were probably born into money.
Yeah, I was not born into money. I was in a very lower middle class family. I've had a job since I was 10 years old throwing newspapers and we had our needs met but not very many of our wants. And
Mm,
so, I get what I didn't even realize how poor we were until we got older, right? You just live
mm,
like that. And
yeah.
that's just like, okay, this is our reality. But um, looking back, my parents could have done a lot better in educating us around money.
Mm-hmm.
What they
Wow.
did teach us was how to balance a checkbook and,
Mm-hmm.
be hard workers. But they never taught us how to plan our spending. And they never really
Yeah.
taught us about credit cards and interest rates and wealth building and the compound. So the things that I could have learned if I was 18 or 20 would
Yeah.
have would have changed the trajectory of my life. But
All of us.
I also don't think you can sit around and whine about what you didn't have when you were a kid.
That's
You are
right.
responsible for you today. And so how are you going to change that? You
Oh
can
my
make more, you
gosh.
can spend less,
How
right?
dare you say it's not my fault? I've been blaming my parents all this time. But what you said earlier was get started.
Yeah.
Okay, so Penny, if somebody wanted to finish this conversation, work with you, or just reach out and connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
The best place is through my website, which is www.pennywisecoaching.com. And I have free communities that they can connect through that, get my newsletter, reach out for a one-on-one talk through my website. So my calendar is linked there. So I would love to continue the conversation with your people and
Yeah.
say, let's just see what resources I could plug you into and
Mm-hmm.
how could you really transform your life? Because
I like
I've
it.
been so blessed to leave my job as a caseworker and do this job full time. And my husband was able to retire 3 years ago because he got overwhelmed and stressed out in the pandemic. And I just said,
Hmm.
we know how to be intentional with our money. Let's just, figure
I
out the
love it.
next phase.
Yeah,
So it is so possible. So
I
yeah, I would
like
love
it.
to stay in touch with your peeps.
Awesome. Don't worry, everybody. If you did not get all of Penny's contact information, everything will be in the description below. And don't forget, subscribe to this YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, and follow us on Instagram. Penny, my friend, before I let you go, we got to play a game. Yay! I
Okay.
love this. So, this game is called This or That. Now, y'all already heard me say, I already know her.
You
So,
know
this
some
is going to
things.
be fun. Yeah, I know some stuff.
Okay.
So,
I'm a
we're
little afraid of what you're going to
be
ask
not
me.
afraid, girl. I got you. But this is going to be fun. I'm just going to give you the choice of a couple of things, and you just tell me which one you like the best. Are you ready
Okay.
to play, friend?
I'm ready. I'm
All right,
ready.
here we go. McDonald's or Burger King?
Burger King,
See, I picked McDonald's for you. Anyway, Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Live to eat or eat to live?
Mm. Eat to live, I think. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. I
Depends on
like
what it is.
food.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just
Well, they
eat.
sound the same to me. I don't know. I'm almost think you're saying the same thing.
They sound the same. Okay. Go all day or I need a nap.
Go all day.
Yes, you definitely are that. Go all day.
Yeah. At
Prince
night.
or Michael Jackson?
Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
In
I
fact,
knew that
I
too.
think I'm going to see his show in Broadway next week, so I'll give you a
Really?
little download after that.
You will definitely have to do that. And
Yeah.
finally, my friend, what would you say is the best advice you've ever given?
Given everything we just talked about today.
That's true. I was going to say it's all in a book called
Yeah,
Make Your
I was
Money
gonna say.
Behave.
And my friend Ricky encouraged me to put my stuff in a book because she was kept saying, some stuff, put it in
You
a
know
book.
lots of stuff, dang it.
So
It's put
yeah,
in a book. Was saying the same thing. Pan, thanks so much for being with me today, my friend. I appreciate you.
it was great. I love your show and thank you for including me in part of your walk.
You are considered a significant other. Where else would you be? All right, everybody. That's it for this week. But don't worry, we'll be back next week with more Faith on Friday presents.